mi napenda kupea example. What is the need uende ukunywe, you feel good for 2 hours, then for the rest of the 22 hours you feel depressed, you spend your time in misery, unaona? Yes, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Cactus Advent. Here at Cactus Advent, we are true to who we are, therefore reminding you to be you, to be unique, and to be better. At last episode, we looked at what were some of the causes and effects of depression and anxiety. And in today's episode, we are going to look at some of the unhealthy ways which people are dealing with this maintenance. Unaona? And you know, another way that people cope up with this thing is through blaming other people and situations for their current words. How many people do you hear at ingekuwa John ile siku angenikujia kwa nyumba, ili labda sasa singekuwa na ball. Ingekuwa John na nani angefanya hivi ile siku, singekuwa mali siko hapa. Ingekuwa ile siku akungenyesha, singefanya hivi. Unaona? And people continue blaming their past, saying that were it not for this and that, I could not be here. But to see, that's a reality. It already happened. Na kama isha happen, God ame to restrict. We can't get back to our past to solve our issues. What we have to do is progress forward. And you know, blaming others shifts the focus from you to other people. You avoid personal responsibility because you don't want to accept that you had a part in that situation. And this is why you find you have resentment, you have bitterness in your heart. You keep blaming others. Hata ina affect your relationships juu. If you keep blaming others, the person whom you blame, you won't get along with them. You don't forgive them. You keep that bitterness in your heart, and it starts consuming you slowly by slowly. And instead of focusing on the mess and wanting to move forward, you continue blocking the way for you to address your problem and move forward. And I want to tell you that your better days don't lie in your past. That has already happened. Your better days lies ahead. The other way that I see people coping up with this thing is that there is emotional eating. People tend to eat food so that they can feel good, and they Netflix and they binge eat. This is why people are eating a lot of chips, a lot of soda, a lot of alcohol, so that they feel good in the short term. And yes, people feel good in the short term. But this is why you find that it only adds to your problem, because once you overeat, you start gaining weight, and it will give you a very low self-esteem about your body shape, and you start increasing your problems. Unapata you only feel good, but after that, in the long term, umekuwa obese. Then another way that people are coping up with this thing is through self-harm. And people either cut themselves, people either beat themselves, and people do all these kinds of self-harms so that they can just get that moment of relief of nimesikia a little better than how I felt. And in the short term, some people cut themselves and they feel better. I had this friend of mine who was in high school, mwenye alikuwa anajikata with razor blade and a bleed. They used to feel good in the short term. And trust me, the most dangerous effect of keeping quiet ama failing to address this thing is that you think about suicide. Let's remember the study I told you about 2022. One person was committing suicide after every 11 minutes. Those 49,000 people who committed suicide in 2022 committed suicide because they let that emotion bottle up within themselves. They stayed there and they believed that they were worthless. They stayed there, they were hopeless. They stayed there when they were sad, and they let that thing, instead of addressing it, they went and drank, and they saw that alcohol didn't solve the problem. They went and engaged in toxic relationships. Wakapata haina solution. They went and they gambled. They went and they watched TVs. They went and were on social media. They went and avoided their problems. But in the end, they came to the realization that the problem is not avoiding it. And to avoid the problem for the last final time, they kill themselves. And people who are talented, they continue wasting their lives. And these people who would have done something for their country. Then another thing that I see is that people engage in toxic relationships. This is where once you have this depression and anxiety, you have a low self-esteem about yourself, and therefore you get into an unhealthy relationships, so that someone at least can value you and you feel as though you are good. So this is where your partner gives you emotional torture, manipulation, and manipulates you and controls you, because they know you have a very low self-esteem about yourself. And you, instead of getting out of that relationship, you continue staying there because you think that there's no one who can accept you for who you are. And a lot of people continue being hurt in these relationships. They continue being emotionally abused because they are afraid of getting out. They are afraid of getting out because they think that there's no one who will accept them for who they are, because they have this low self-esteem about themselves, which is coming from depression and anxiety. Another way that people think about this thing is that they engage in reckless or risky behaviors. This is where though you raise your mood once in a while. You are willing to go to take a vehicle, drive so fast, get that adrenaline, so that you can distract yourself from the real world. And another way that I find people deal with depression and anxiety is through compulsive, people spend a lot of their time either shopping, gambling, all these things to keep them away from the real life. No. It all ties back into the escapism or avoidance, why you don't want to deal with the emotion, so you get away from this. No. Thanks for joining me for this episode. Join me next week as we continue this conversation right here.